Hello there. It's Thursday, day 206, 365 days towards racial change. Still continuing in our extended series in Uncle Tom's Cabin in lieu of my vacation, taking we call this kind of maybe a summer break. And I love story time here at Racial Change. Anyway, going to get into those meatier subjects uh, in another week or so. We're going to move Uncle Tom's Cabin along. Plenty of talking points as we engage in Harriet Beecher Stowe's awesome narrative. We're here talking about black issues, and as always, I like to challenge the black mind, the white mind as well. But first, we'll talk about the black mind in America, how it's getting along, what the black mind thinks. Is it being, has there been any change, liberation? If you follow this series, whatever side you may fall on, not necessarily a racial side, but, the philosophical side, a thinking side, a lover of wisdom side, or not. You know, maybe you're getting fuel for hate. Anyway, uh, this project's concerned with liberation. Liberation begins with some understanding of where we come from, how we got here. Right? Liberation. Well, we're talking about going to the moon again. Um, well, that comes from understanding his history, how we got to fly, experiments with aerodynamics. We've been there before, so there's some precedent. Same thing with elevating the black mind, liberating it. Now, I'm not saying that all black minds are necessarily under some cloud or um, wrestling with some ignorance. Since starting this project, I've been introduced to some very liberated black minds. I'm glad, and I'm having some fellowship with some dynamic people organizations I didn't know even existed. So I'm being liberated as I go forth. So, another aspect is the black mind open for change. Does it believe? I'm coming from a condition orientation of privation where, um, not coming from having a whole lot, and I made a lot of poor choices. I've fallen into a lot of pitfalls and traps that are man-made, that, in my opinion, are white man-made, some of them. And, so liberating my mind is a big chunk of the purpose of this year-long project. Consequently, the white mind. I'm going to meet my friend. I've got a lot of white friends and white mentors. They kind of don't know they've been drafted, but I asked them some tough questions, and I'm toying with the idea of asking my one of my mentors, what's it like to have white skin? I wonder what that kind of answer he would give in that, because we're growing closer, and I don't know. I kind of, if I'm going to hang around you, we're going to break and breach some boundaries. We're going to bond, and it's just the way I am. I don't. Why do you want to hang around somebody superficially? Um, I think I'm kind of burnt out on that. Well, let's have some intimacy here. Let's get inside one another's head. And so I might ask him. It's a crazy question. He can't answer because he has nothing. I would answer. My answer would be from a perspective of always looking out and seeing those with white skin having more. There's more of them and stuff like that. They're all over government and control. We just saw Mueller. Oh boy, I'm having trouble with his last name lately. You know what I'm talking about. But he was on CNN, the workday. That poor guy. I could tell, he's got so much going on in his brain, and he's a little elderly too. So he wasn't. You think that it would be like the movies, and there'd be some drama, and everybody's on point. But this gentleman, had looked like he was struggling mentally up there. Uh, but anyway, I'm off topic there. But so I'm always, to have black skin is to always feel like, for me to have black skin is to feel like uh, white people always have more, better, and stuff. They're government and they're controlling. You know, to me, the minority isn't. It's just a numerical thing, not so much a color designation. I've stuck around here long enough. You'll know I don't like minorities. Let's call black people black people. Now, getting back to the white mind, does it understand that it's privileged, that it is, working in the world uh, with such a level of freedom, an absence of, direct oppression, uh, feeling at home in America? Does the white mind understand that? You or is it a blind spot for white folks? Financial literacy, another big concern. I'm reading a book called A Creature from Jekyll Island, or The Creature from Jekyll Island. Easy book to find. It's a tome, almost like the Mueller report. And one of the security officers on the train, she was inquiring about it because apparently she's a bibliophile. I told her, it's about how money works. So this is a deep book, but do you have some fundamental ideas about how money works in the world and in America, how it's moving about, and how it uh, who's running it, who's in control of it, its history. Do you understand when you take $10 to the bank? As soon as you deposit that money, the bank takes $9 of it and lends it out, does all kinds of creative stuff with it, and excuse me, they're counting on you not coming back the next day and to ask for your $10 because it's really not there. $1 of it, at best, might be there. Realistically, actually less. But they're okay. They want you to use the electronic version of your money and stuff, but they don't like it when you come for cash. And matter of fact, they want you to give notice. Do you know why they want you to give notice? And that's because, like I said, you need to give notice because, um, especially if you have a large account, say $100,000. Well, if you can't go to the bank and get your $100,000, 95,000 of that is out in cyberspace and lent out and stuff like that. You know, get your head around that and Understand what's happens when your bank uses your money and stuff. That's why you get paid interest. You get a little piece of interest because by law they're using your money and stuff. But you'd be hard pressed to get a loan, especially if you're black. Understanding that stuff is important. Financial literacy. Read something beyond. Oh, I put away some money and stuff. Do something with your money and understand how it works. I am inspired by a man named Dr. Claude Anderson, who really put he helped me understand my angst, my plight in America. My circumstances haven't changed, but I like knowing, and he really opens up to a lot of issues for me to help me understand being black and why I feel uh, a sense of struggle and challenge in America. I was a Black History reader. This is Black Labor, White Wealth, and here is Powernomics, Dr. Anderson's national plan to empower Black America. You can find Dr. Anderson at powernomics.com. Behind me, you'll see the hashtag #US2 symbol. Find Black women conversing there, support one another. Check out Black Enough, BLAGGENUF, and groups of blacks there. If you can't find your flavor here on the World Wide Web, do what I did. Start your own. I got a handful of private email subscribers. We're in our extended version of Uncle Tom's Cabin. We're just walking through the text, and I'm just picking out the points that resonate with me and things we can expand on. To look at historical precedent, compare history with our present day experience, things like that. Yeah, it's enjoyable. So relax, get some ice cream. Actually, for the next another week or two, we're going to be in this text. Day 206. Now we start a new chapter. Where we left yesterday with Tom and Eva. They're at Lake Pontchartrain, the St. Clair summer home, place to cool off from the stifling, possible humidity of deep south. It's New Orleans, Delta humidity and stuff like that. So, white, affluent, privileged people can have homes in places and stuff. I've been exposed to a ski club. It's nice that black people go to the mountains to ski. That's a huge minority of us probably go consistently, but I have white friends. They go travel all the time. It's a lifestyle. So I live near the mountains, and it's nice. You can go a short distance. It's got a lot. It's uphill, but for a short distance, you can escape the heat, so to speak, and just be elevated, and it's cooler up there. So you can have a summer space up in the mountains. That's what the St. Clairs have around this lake, and it's a real lake. This is a fictional text, but she's using a lot of actual names of places and things like that. So Lake Pontchartrain it's north of New Orleans, and that's where the St. Clair family is for the moment. So today, we left. Eva was saying, "Oh, I'm not long for this world," because she has this spiritual depth that she's character, and it's probably only matched and rivaled by Tom, although Tom, he doesn't talk about leaving the world and stuff like that. But this little, uh, at this time, he was going to be between 11 and 12, I'm guessing. And but she has this maturity. She talks about seeing angels, sea of fire, sea of glass, pearly gates in the clouds, and spirits in white. She has this very mature spiritual language happening, and attached to that is her own self prophecy that she's not long for this world, and her spiritual maturity is matched by her decreasing health. You know, the sicker she gets, the more elevated she becomes spiritually. It's a, I don't know, it's a natural balance. As you get close to peace. I remember my grandmother, when my mother's mother died, um, her kidneys had failed. She was in the hospital, but there was the last time I talked to her on the phone. She was in the hospital, and there was a very peace about her. We knew she wasn't long for the world, and so there was a peace. Her body's failed. Now the spirit is can live. We're very attached to our selves. We have a lot of discussions. We have even have war over what the truth is about us. Um, but I bet you across the board, you take anybody anywhere on the planet, any religion, faith, and you'll find a person who has practiced, well, especially those who have practiced the faith. Um, you'll find them very receptive to spiritual things, no matter what. Because the spirit doesn't have a book or text or creed and all this stuff that um, we polarize and kill each other over. But you'll find that individual um, just being very spiritual. There's just something very universal about the spirit. That's Eva. That's what's happening with her. So she's sickly, feverish. She's coughing. I grew up in the East Coast, very wet area. Had issues with lung problems. Almost died from pneumonia in my early 20s. Uh, so I know the damps and the humidity and stuff. It makes it hard if you've got that congestive issue. So this coughing is noticeable now in Eva's life, and she's pale, sickly, and stuff like that. Stowe goes into kind of this ode to Eva and her elevated spiritual state in the face of her sickliness. Tuberculosis is suggested in the text. Ophelia is concerned because Ophelia, she's tried all her medicine on Eva, nothing's working. She says she tries to get St. Clair more involved with Eva's plight, um, getting some her issues health-wise addressed more. At the end of the text, there's no visitation by doctors or anything else like that. But St. Clair, whenever he goes into town, he comes back with maybe some new medicine, some new quack that's probably sold him some sugar water or something. You don't know what you're getting back in those days. And he's experimented with these things on Eva. But the thing is, St. Clair is terrified because Eva's maybe besides Ophelia, and Tom, there's just so few points of stability in St. Clair's life, and Tom's like, uh, and St. Clair's like terrified that this little ray of sunshine in his life, mature as she is and all this stuff, may be leaving this world. So he starts to spend more time with her. Tries to he intuitively is trying to lay hold on the moments that may be left, and he wants to be there to glean every memory. If this is the case, nobody's sure that she is slipping away, but she's just that sick where there's elevated concern. That might be why they went to the lake at that time. The text isn't clear about that, whether it was just um, natural circumstance to go to the lake every year, or is this a kind of desperation, get her to the lake, cool off a little bit, maybe it'll improve her health. So all this is going on uproar. We cut to Marie and Eva. Marie St. Clair's her mother, and Eva are having a discussion about educating, bringing literacy to the slaves. And Marie, she defaults, like many of the white folks of that time, and that we find here in this time too, she reinforces the thinginess. I know it's not probably a real word, but I'm trying to get you the idea of the dehumanization of black folks. The black folks, they're black skin, they have a leprosy. They're unable to adhere to high moral standards. They don't have the capacity. They're the missing link between farm animals and white people. Anything but just a human being with a different color skin. They, that doesn't come across. You have to dehumanize the slave, that black person, to treat them poorly, to pay them, well, if at all, if you pay them at all, poor wages, work them hard. That's what they're built for. They're not fully human. They're there to serve us. Which is right up Marie's alley. She's a narcissist, self-centered. The world is for Marie, and so Marie says, "Look, they're just made for hard work." Eva says, "Well, what about when they need to know God's will and nobody's around? Oh, we can read it to them whenever." They don't necessarily have the full capacity for that kind of thing. St. Clair and Mr. Shelby are of that mind. I'm sure a lot of white folks, especially slave owners, are like, yeah, we give them religion. It kind of helps control the black folks, but they don't really have that capacity um, for high spiritual matters. They lie, they're thieves, and all that. They don't count the desperation under which they live. If a person's desperate, trying to get food, take care of the family, hold the family together, some family values, yeah, you might find some people cutting corners a little bit here and there. They need it when there's no one to read to them, because Eva's counter, and she's also foreshadowing her not being able to read to them. She's idealistic, and she's not swayed. Her mom tries to change the subject by saying, "Look at this jewel. Is this a great jewel?" But Eva's like, if I had that jewel, I'd buy a big old place, and we'd have big educational, kind of like a university out in the woods somewhere. Is Eva's idea. Now, this is an idea about literacy. We know various places we can find a lot of instances where it's illegal to teach a black person to read. don't teach black people to read because then they become more difficult and all that. Because reading is knowledge, is access. It's going to change the mind. It's going to create questions. It's going to create a hunger, thirst for knowledge. So this problem with literacy among black folks, very challenging. You could get in a lot of trouble for teaching blacks. I think Harriet Beecher Stowe, the author of this text, she's given a literacy plug for black folks um, in her in this. Not so much probably a problem up north, not a big issue, but in the South they dare not have the slave read, and which is interesting. Her text, has slaves reading, being taught. There's no pushback on literacy as far as official legislation. But by case basis, you find the slave masters indifferent towards it. You find the children more involved with getting the slaves to read. I think that's a childlike trick to get people knowing what they know. Maybe a point, maybe a way of exercising some power and control. I don't know. But let's look at just 3 instances out of Black Labor, White Wealth of some of the laws. 1819, Missouri literacy law forbade assembling or teaching black slaves to read or write. 1832, Alabama and Virginia literacy laws fined and flogged whites for teaching blacks to read or write. 1833, Georgia literacy law provided fines and whippings for teaching blacks. And this, we can go on and on, state by state. I'm sure we can find every state, every slave state especially, with its little wooden placard with the penalties for teaching a slave to read. And Eva says, this is important, because Mammy's another house slave. She's close to Mammy. She's close to Tom. Tom can struggle with his Bible. They struggle with it, but they're not fluent with it. The white kids are being taught and going to school, being groomed for positions. So now, so Eva's stuck on the spiritual side of it. She says, well, at least get them so they can be comfortable reading the Bible. The white establishment uses the Bible as a point of control and reference, so it's only natural that black people should be involved and interested with it. The conversation is obviously too much for Marie because, Marie wants to hear about herself, hear what concerns Marie. She's a narcissist. And so she quickly drums up one of her headaches that she always has on hand when she needs to change the subject or she's in a situation where she does not feel comfortable. Even in light of the negative reception of teaching black slaves to read and write, Eva starts teaching Mammy. Ophelia is teaching Topsy. Tom gets along the best he can, but Eva wants to do some outreach. She's being called heavenward, and she really wants to leave a legacy. I can tell, and a great one would be leaving behind a lot of literate and literate black folks who could read and write. Danger to the South. It's a way of elevated way of communicating. It's not as transparent, and so you can see why it's a threat. I think about how I read. I'm always reading. I'm I'm glad I don't drive in some ways because on the train I can just open my book. Somebody else is taking care of it. Just don't hit anything. But I love to read. That's day 206 out of the way. 365 days towards racial change, moving right along. Appreciate you hanging out. Let's see what's going to happen in Uncle Tom's Cabin tomorrow. Have a great night. We'll see you soon.